Hello and welcome to another edition of Thursday's Coach's Corner, where each and every Thursday, myself and on occasion when it's not in season, Coach Dave Serrano and I will talk with college coaches from around the country, all levels, all divisions, in hopes of sharing information that you, as student athletes, as well as families, parents, can utilize with regard to your student athletes' current or future development. Today, I am joined with someone I've had the pleasure of knowing both on and off the field as both a dad, parent, as well as a fellow coach, associate head coach slash pitching coach at Vanderbilt University, anchor down. Scott Brown. Scott, thank you very much for joining us today. I know it's in season and I know you're a busy man.
It's great to see you, and I really enjoy it. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, very, very welcome. First, before I get started, what is it like to be kind of like, I know you and Mary have the three girls and Nolan, your son, but it's almost like you and Corbs and Bax. You have sons all over, baseball world this time of year, who makes it, who's in the show, who's getting assigned. What's it like seeing all your former players, both pitchers as well as position players, making their way throughout professional baseball?
Well, it's very rewarding. I mean, you watch these guys kind of grow in their journey and through their time here at Vanderbilt, and then you watch them even after they leave here, and they continue to develop. But the cool thing is knowing, the foundation that Corbs builds here, and we kind of administer as assistant coaches and keep it going just to watch those guys, achieve their dreams, success. And longevity, it's great. You really do. I don't watch a ton of Major League Baseball just because of our schedule, but it's just awesome seeing those guys up there and watching them throughout the time through the year and catching them usually, hopefully in a playoff run if that happens. But the best part is when they come back, and work out here in the off season and share their experiences. Good, bad, indifferent, doesn't matter. Just sharing their experiences throughout the time and what they've learned but and then their ability and want to give back to the program through knowledge and care. These guys, they really care. Corbs, myself, and Bax don't get a chance to see them in person, at that level too often, if ever. Really just because of our schedules. But those guys knowing we're watching, and then coming back here, and their pride in Vanderbilt it's awesome to see.
Well, I know that it's reciprocal getting a chance to talk to some of the guys throughout the years, and I think it's a tremendous program that has been built at Vanderbilt over the last 22 some odd years. Today I really want to take the time to talk and discuss with you. You're a former college pitcher at Cortland University. You're also you've been a pitching coach at St. John's. You've been now, I believe, we're going on year 12 at Vanderbilt. And so I really want to talk to you as more of a parent and a former pitcher about just throwing and pitching at younger ages. And we were having a great dialogue offline here about your son Nolan. Now, for those of you that may not have seen this, Scott, talk a little bit about your Little League experience, with regard as a dad, because I know Nolansville, I believe, went to the Little League World Series. What was that like as a parent and as a coach to watch your son participate in that event?
Well, it's one of the meccas of baseball, and you only really get one opportunity when you're 12
Right.
to do that, and it's like almost every kid's dream. So just the ability for Mary and I just to sit back and watch that team, go through that journey was incredible. And then to see his personality at a young age come out inside that team, in some big moments, and how he handled it, as kind of a leader, and the humility he kind of portrayed during that time frame was cool. He really was never affected by the big stage. He just wasn't phased, and that was the coolest thing to see as a parent. Because when you're 12, the emotions, good and bad, kind of are roller coaster, and they're normal. Those are normal emotions for young kids. Parents should not ever get, bent out of shape when their kid, is crying or upset at that age, or, fired up, because that's raw emotion as a young kid. Those are great learning experiences. So, but it was just really fulfilling, just the opportunity. It almost felt like, wow, this is surreal. I'm sitting here thinking, just Omaha, his ability as a young kid to come to Omaha and watch us as a, in 2014, and win that thing and be a part of it and see it at a young age. And then through the years, going there 3 or 4 times, and then his opportunity. I don't doubt that his experiences inside this program at a young age. I mean, Corbs talks about it all the time. When he was 4 years old, he was in here in the locker room, and he's hanging out with these guys, and just being around these types of people in his life, I think really set him up for that. And it was really just such a fulfilling journey to watch those kids compete as a team. And, to see him out there on that field, you're like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to pitch in Williamsport. And, he did a great job. And the cool thing was, he just, they lost, but he wasn't too emotional about it, good and bad. He felt like, this is just such a great experience. Let's just keep coming back and try to win the rest of these games. So it was great.
One of the reasons why I wanted to really have a talk with you is because of that progression throughout Little League and then to the big field. We have a lot of discussion and dialogue, much of it on the social media platforms. What's the right pathway? And I think you and I share something in common with regard to allowing the process to occur kind of through Mother Nature and more natural than pushing the envelope, so to speak. Talk a little bit about Nolan's progression post Little League, the adapting to the bigger diamond, maybe, throwing routines, things like that. What are some of the things? I know there's been a big growth spurt, but talk a little bit about his progression from 13 through now as a high school freshman.
Sure. Well, Nolan had a good foundation as a young player with throwing the ball in the strike zone. From a young age, just the ability to pitch and throw strikes. And, there wasn't many flaws in, when you're looking at it from a throwing action standpoint, where you're like, the arm works, he's athletic, he plays baseball, and he's got a feel for the ball. So I think one of the biggest challenges is, everyone at this, I don't want to say everyone, but most people look at velocity as, the key contributor to success. And it certainly helps players at all levels. We know that, but you can have success in different ways. And, the big thing that I've always talked to them about is, don't compare yourself to anybody else at your age. The 14U you're playing, the 13U, you don't know how old they are. None of that really matters. What matters is your journey, how you're approaching this game. And this is a marathon. You love baseball. You work at it, you love it, and you want to be good. You're going to be fine. And there's no real parameters on this race. You might not be the best 12-year-old or 13-year-old in the country. You might even be the best 12, 13-year-old on your own team. But when you have that kind of passion for what you're doing, you want to play and you want to get on the field and you want to have an opportunity to perform and fail. I think that's a big thing. So the biggest thing I talked to him about was the not comparison. And then I talked to him when he was 13. I said, this is going to be a huge jump. In my opinion, it's kind of too large of a jump from the 50-foot mound to the 60 and a half, 60 feet, 6 inches. It's a large jump for these kids. And, the big thing I told them that year was get acclimated to the field. Do not try to throw the ball by hitters. Just execute your stuff, because regardless if you throw 77 or 84, you're probably not throwing it by somebody at that age, just because of the distance that they now have to watch the ball travel. It's just not going to do it. So the biggest thing you can do is learn how to shape your pitches and throw strikes, control the game, work on your pickoff move, which I'm still working with him on to this day, believe it or not, as a left-handed pitching coach with a left-handed son.
Yes, indeed.
And, from there, it was when he joined a 14U team that was, I guess you could say one of the higher touted teams in the area. They wanted to go through a whole development phase, and with weighted baseballs and stuff like that. And I just said, we're not going to do that. We're not going to train all winter. Personally, I said, he plays basketball. And I really firmly believe at a young age when you're growing, you need some downtime from throwing. It's part of the nature of how things are done. I really strongly believe in that. Um, could it affect you coming out of the gate? Yeah, he might have had a slow start a little bit in his travel baseball seasons the last couple of years or his middle school seasons, but as the season goes on, you see the growth take place, and there's also a real good foundation built because he hasn't been throwing a ball chasing numbers, And if you think about just the reality of it, if you improve 2 to 3 miles an hour with velocity, how much reward is that going to give you during the season at age 13, 14, 15
Right.
versus the risk of like, what are you doing to your natural growth development down the road? And I get it. I know parents and people out there really, want their kids to excel and be good at what they do. But it just takes patience. It takes patience, and it takes the right messages to the kids to just hang in there and keep going. And the other reality is, and you're on the other end of this because your son, is playing at the highest level, but you know that is such an accomplishment. There's only been 20,
Right.
thousand baseball players that play in the big leagues, and most of these guys that play, the window is really short. Whether it's through high school, whether it's they go on to college and play, and then it's over.
Right.
It's over for 98, 99% of the players. So the key thing is, keeping that perspective and saying, listen, it's about now and playing and doing this and that. We're not training big leaguers like at a 13, 14-year-old age. If they do that, they're wired right. There's probably fibers that they've been blessed with to get there. And, the ability to be available to play so that you can get better at the skill of the game is such an important piece of the puzzle. So,
Well, I think
um,
you really bring up some really great topics that I think a lot of parents as a whole, really want to hear from people such as yourself. I mean, I can get up and pontificate, but I'm a dad. You're a Power Five, Division One, elite SEC coach. You recruit, you see it, but now from the eyes, from the visual of it as a dad, I really love the fact. I mean, I tell people all the time, Tyler never threw hard enough to be one of those guys that really garnered a lot of attention, but he could pitch and he was a multi sport athlete. Now, is that the right way or the right method? All I know is, and this is really the main point that I think you're making, is the kids only have one childhood, and we don't really need to script or predetermine, a destination. Allow them to, and you nailed it, allow them to fail, allow them to fall. They figure things out. They're able to put pieces together. But talk a little bit about, Nolan and you guys are playing catch. You're not chasing numbers. You mentioned pitch shape, which I would love for you to discuss because that's the vernacular that's kind of out there all over social media: shaping, pitching, tunneling, etc. Talk a little bit about that with regard to you and Nolan talking about pitch shape as opposed to pitch velocity.
yeah, yeah. So during COVID, I was very fortunate from that time because he, was 10 years old. He was 11 actually at that time, turning 11. So, he wanted to practice and train every day and just play baseball. So we had an opportunity to get to the field just about every day. Now I didn't make him go. I just said, "Hey, do you want to go? Do you want to go? But if we go, we're gonna work on things. It's not gonna be just a father son catch in the backyard. We're just we'll work at the game. We'll have fun. We'll take some batting practice." And him and his buddy and another dad and I just went to the field just about every day. But I remember talking to Sonny Gray and Kyle Wright, who I thought spun breaking balls really well. And both of them had remained really healthy at that time, and posted throughout their entire career on the mound. So I asked them when they learned to spin the ball, and both of them told me, at a young age, about 10 or 11. But Kyle Wright said, "My dad taught me how to spin it correctly," and I said, "Hmm." So I just, at that time frame, I said, Nolan, I'm going to teach you a little bit of how to spin the breaking ball and feel for the change. But when we enter a game, here in the next month and a half, when it gets back going, we're not going to go out and throw, 40 curveballs inside that game. I just want you to realize how the ball spins out of your hands. So I taught him correctly how to spin the breaking ball at a young age rather than trying to manipulate and make all these shapes through, poor arm action and stuff like that. So um, that was really phase one. But the big message was we're also going to go out and pitch with our fastball and get the ball in the zone. We'll use the secondary stuff at 11 and 12, in optimal times. So that was step one. But just continuing to just let him naturally feel it through an old progress of, yeah, that matches what my eyes are seeing, and letting him understand like how the ball comes out of his fingers rather than, hey, torque it this way or do something this way. It's like, hey, see if you can make that pitch go a little bit more down. See if you can make that pitch go a little bit more, to your right, or sweep it away from the lefty a little bit if you want, rather than, hey, get your fingers on top of that thing, rip that thing down. Because I don't think young kids understand that stuff personally. I think and then what they do is they, when you give them an external cue like that, they start to mess with their grips a little bit and they start to feel like how it naturally comes out. And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes catch. You got to
Right.
play catch,
Right.
you got to play catch.
Right.
And you don't always have to be on the mound to feel these things. And you don't always have to be throwing them at max intent. And it just created, a good feel for the ball, and then last year in his 14 year after middle school, I saw him pitch once and I told him like your changeup needs to really develop. Your fastball's good. You spin it well. You got command of it, but you really need to get your changeup going. So I want you to play with your grips. But the biggest thing is you need to understand how to stay on it. And, you did a great job with Tyler teaching him a changeup. So once they get that feel of staying on it, then they start to move the seams around a little bit, and they start to see, hey, well, that thing sunk a little more, or that faded a little more. So, but it's just through a natural process of playing catch. He's never been on TrackMan, he's never been on Rapsodo or anything along those lines where it's like, oh, you're getting this kind of movement, and that type of deal. So, just try to steer him away from that stuff right now, because I think understanding his skill and feel is the most important.
Well, I try to tell parents all the time that, and maybe talk a little bit about this from a pitching coach perspective. A lot of pitchers, and the most famous playing catch grip discussion is Mariano Rivera is playing catch, and he finally figures out, the famous cut fastball grip just by playing catch, flat ground. And I try to tell parents all the time, pitchers in between starts, they have a throwing partner typically as they get older. And, you go out and you're playing catch with different grips. You're getting acknowledgement from your throwing partner. You both are kind of offering insights as to what you see and what you feel. Talk a little bit about that in between starts. For a college pitcher, we have 7 days. You're out here playing catch. Maybe it was Sonny Gray and, on an off day, and he starts to figure out, I get a little bit more bite with this breaking ball. But tell parents, it doesn't all have to be based off of technology. It's through playing catch and long toss and just side work during the week.
Yeah, I think that's phase one. I think when you're really trying to feel things, because what happens when we get the technology involved is we start chasing numbers.
Bingo.
And when we start chasing numbers, then we start chasing manipulation, maybe through unnatural movements. And I think that's an area where, if you just go back to playing catch and it's like, hey, I'm trying to do things with this pitch, and you get feedback with your eyes. That's where I always start. I mean, those are the most important days for our pitchers at Vanderbilt, is just how you play catch in between. And I understand people need recovery days, and at this level, and as the season goes along, I get it. But the ability to play intentful catch and feel what you need to feel, and you may be working on something, just a little bit of a different shape. Your slider as a college kid has, maybe not as tight. I use Bryce Cunningham as an example. Is his fastball started to lose a little bit of life to his glove side. So last week it was all week the focus was, we need to get that fastball with some good life to your glove side, because you're just kind of fading off on it. And the focus was, him feeling, and this is a feel. This isn't, fixed for everyone. It's, north south with his glove side. It just that creates the feel for him to stay behind his fastball on his glove side. And we did very limited mound work. Most of the work was done playing catch, and then we just got the feel for the mound prior to his start. But it was very short lived because he had already felt great in playing catch with it, and that's such a big aspect of just phase. Like to me, it's phase one. If you're trying to create a pitch as a pitcher, or you're trying to create feel as a pitcher, you have to be able to play catch with it first. And the big thing is on flat ground is it may not have that most perfect shape because of the angle, but how does it come out of your hand? That's where your throwing partner comes into
Right.
play. How's it spinning? It may not be this nasty biter right then and there, but you add in the slope of the mound and you understand it like that's really going to take off once you get that angle right. The challenge with flat ground a little bit is sometimes guys will want to create the angle on flat ground and then they create some bad habits of just getting too far out in front of their body. So, it does take a little bit of feel to understand where you're at. But playing catch to me is, you talk to all the great ones, you watch them, they do that better than everyone. Kirk Casale was just in my office a couple weeks ago when he was transitioning to AAA, and I asked him about big league pitchers. I said, "What do they do? What are these guys that play for a long time? What's the difference between them and the other guys?" And he said, mentally, obviously, number one, but their commitment to what they do. They play catch better than everybody else on the field. They condition their bodies better than everybody else on the field, and they're prepared to go into the games. I'm like, wow, pretty simple.
And that's a valuable lesson for young pitchers and families of pitchers. That's really something you should take note of. I would be remiss if I didn't ask this as a final question, because I know that parents are going to just bombard me, but I want to ask you, Kyle Wright, we talk, I think one of the best to ever come out of, if not the best to ever come out of Vanderbilt, Sonny Gray, as far as from a competitive standpoint. Discuss what is the right way to learn a breaking ball. In other words, just share your thoughts. How was Kyle Wright taught properly by his dad to throw a breaking ball, or Sonny Gray? How were they taught at that 11 to 12-year-old time period?
Well, the first thing is just getting the grip right, and understanding, what type of pitch you're trying to throw, and and the ability just to feel its spin. And I'd use lighter too as an example here because Al taught Jack, and the biggest thing the first thing we talk about is the grip right and keeping the wrist in its position. I think a lot of times what happens with young kids is they want to make moves with their wrist to
Right.
manipulate the ball, torque the ball. So we just talked about keeping the wrist in the right position, and we started with just a simple horseshoe curveball, if you want to call it, just inside the curve, inside the four seams. Yep, just right there. And I put my hat on the ground, and Nolan was about 40 feet away, if that. And all I talked to him about was spinning the breaking ball into the hat,
Right.
spinning the breaking ball into the hat,
Love
so that
that.
he could feel the fingers get to the front, and and it was creating that right spin on it. Knowing that, like as he started to go, obviously there'd be the way the arm unwinds, there'd be a little bit more side spin to it, and it would create a little different shape on it. But the wrist is probably the biggest key to me when I'm talking to a young kid, just in general. I still have to talk to some of our guys about it because they feel like they want to, really radio dial some things at times. And, as you get older and you start to feel your arm a little bit differently and the muscles are more developed, then things can change a little bit there. But as a young kid, that's where I'd start, is just, the old expression of pulling down the lampshade type
Right.
deal.
Yep.
It's that creates the feel for it. There's all sorts of gadgets and stuff that I'm sure you could tinker with out there. But to me, the white thing is the most important thing that we train with, and that's where I want to create the feel for it first. So,
Well, I'll tell you,
that,
the number one thing I did with Tyler when he was little is I would take a Pringles can or a tennis ball can, and I would tell him, until you can get that tennis ball can to go end over end, If I see a helicopter, we're not throwing that pitch. If I start to see the
That's
Pringle
right.
can come out. So I just remember doing that. But Scott, I really want to say thank you. It's the busiest. We're in the height of SEC baseball. I really appreciate, as always. I think there's no one better in the country to talk pitching and throwing, especially from the perspective now as a dad, which I'm thrilled to be able to follow Nolan and you. I'm sure you and Mary and the girls are excited when he throws, and I'm excited to hopefully see him in Commodore country in another few years. And, I'm going to be following that progression. Tyler says to say hello. I just saw him last week when he was in town, and still has his Vandy gear on, by the way, out on the field. So, but tell everybody there and at the Hawk I said hello. And again, as always, best of luck the rest of the way. I hope the season ends in the big city with the letter O in June.
I appreciate it, Walt. Thank you. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say I really appreciate what you're trying to do, for the whole industry. I mean, and I think you're starting at the right level, because the foundation of our sport is our children and our young athletes. So, educating these kids and parents on, methods that could potentially, allow them to have successful journeys throughout baseball. And, I didn't mention major league careers, because I think that's, kind of the cherry on top of the sundae, but successful baseball experiences throughout their time. Is great. So appreciate what you do, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much, Scott. And for folks, I really want to let people know, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. This is the type of information from a baseball perspective that's going to help children or student athletes of all ages throughout the course of their development. And I really want to say thank you today to Coach Brown. And I want to wish and encourage everyone a great season and a great week in baseball. Thank you.